do a little virtual plant walk for you with a few plants that are coming up in my very messy garden right now. These are basically wild plants that I'm going to talk about that just have showed up here and that I'm happy to have. The first one here is mullein, and mullein is what we call a biennial plant. So it grows for 2 years. The first year it looks like that over there. So it's small, just a few little leaves. And that's it. It might get more leaves this year, but that's all that it'll do. This is much bigger, and so it is likely, I'm guessing, but just from looking at it, a second year plant. So for the second year, this plant will grow a huge stalk that can get anywhere from 3 to 6 feet tall, maybe even taller, one stalk. And then it will produce flowers and drop its seeds, and then the seeds will hopefully fall again. Part of why this is growing here is because this is disturbed soil, and mullein likes to grow in disturbed soil. So we use mullein leaf for our lung support. So it's not necessarily for lung infections, although it can be supportive during a lung infection. It is really more of a lung tonic. So it helps to keep our lungs healthy, basically. And then if we do have a dry cough, it's especially good for dry coughs. Usually I use it as a tea or a tincture. The tea for some people from the dried mullein can be a little, because mullein has all these little hairs, so it's very furry, which is also an indication of its use for the lungs, because this is kind of like the cilia on our lungs. So in the old way of herbalism, this is what we would call the doctrine of signatures. So it basically tells us what it's used for by how it looks. So we use mullein either during the first year or the spring of the second year. So I can use this now. Once it produces a stalk, I won't pick the leaves anymore. So the one thing about picking mullein leaves is you obviously don't want to harm the plant, because if you picked all these leaves, it would kill the plant. So when I am gathering mullein, I'll either just pick a couple leaves from each plant. That's usually what I do, is I just pick a couple leaves from each plant so that I'm not killing the whole plant. Right now, I have been coming out and picking fresh leaves and making tea with them. So that's mullein. About growing mullein, you can grow mullein, and the best luck that I know of people having growing mullein is just scattering seeds on open soil. And even then, it kind of has a mind of its own. So when I've tried to cultivate it in rows, it just gets really unhappy and it doesn't seem to thrive. So I just let it grow in my garden wherever it wants and kind of work around it. So you can see here, it can be a little tricky. Sometimes I do have to remove them if I'm in need of this area of the garden. But this year, with our current respiratory virus going around, I may even just leave this section of the garden. I have other places I can plant. So that's mullein. The next plant I want to point out that's coming up right now is one of our most famous spring plants, and that is nettles. And these are little baby nettles coming up. Now, nettles do sting if you touch them. They're not so bad this time of year. As they get bigger, they seem to get more stingy. But these grow generally wild. You can grow them. The best way that I know to grow them is to transplant them from somebody else's garden. Again, usually they're not growing in the garden. They're usually growing in the compost pile, which is what they're doing here. They're growing right by my compost. They love manure, compost, and high nitrogen soils. So This time of year for the nettles, I've been coming out every day and I just take a pair of scissors and clip the top, and I may gather a few of them for either tea, or you can put them in soups and stews. I think tonight maybe we'll put them in our omelets. They are extremely nutritious. One of the most nutritious plants on earth as far as I know. High in calcium, magnesium, iron, and a bunch of trace minerals. So that's our virtual plant walk for today. Thanks.